friends. Welcome back to another episode of the unofficial companion podcast for HBO Max's hit show, Industry. I'm Jen.
I'm Kristen.
And we are the Wall Street Skinny. We are two lifelong friends, former investment bankers, who are here to break down everything in your favorite show, from the finance to the romance, and to give you the skinny on what's real and what's just Hollywood. So this is season 1, episode 5. Last week, we all know I was really stressed out about the about the wrong way trade. So we can calm down a little bit. I got to take a breather in this one, and I only have 8 pages of notes for today's episode, unlike my typical 20 or 25 pages. So it's a little less finance heavy today, a little more plot heavy. So I'm going to have you do a lot of the heavy lifting today, Kristen. There are some things that I do want to touch on.
I mean, I have 7 pages of notes, but it's basically just on the plot points. I will say, though, there is a very stressful episode. So we have talked about how I am binging ahead. So I'm almost through season 3, and Jen is doing this in real time. There is an episode in season 3 that might be as stressful as the one last week. So I'm just warning you.
Okay.
You have a lot. We have a lot to do before we get there. But oh my God, I watched that last night. I was like, oh my God, this is too much.
I'll steal myself.
So,
okay.
Yes, I will prepare you when we get to that. But so this episode, as you said, is much less heavy in the finance. There's a little bit, and I was asking you before we hopped on about Italian Brexit, so you're going to explain that to us, which is one of the backdrops with this episode. But it's called Learned Behavior, and we were chatting a little bit just about the titles that they give each of these episodes, and you were pointing out that it really kind of speaks to the cultural themes that we're going to see throughout this one. So we'll get into that. But the show opens up with this weird flirtation between Yaz and Robert. So
flirtation
Yaz is like,
in the modern age, man. That was not how I remember my husband sending me a text at work saying, "You look nice today." And I was like, he could get fired for this. Like, oh my God.
Yes.
This is racy stuff. This
seriously
pales in comparison to what Yasmin and Robert have going on.
Right. And also Yaz has a boyfriend who, by the way, sucks. And we're going to get to that. But so
Seb, can we please get rid of Seb already? So in the opening scene, just to clarify what's actually going on, Yasmin is taking naked photos of herself and sending them to Robert. And Seb is yelling at Yasmin about not taking care of their plants while she's doing this. And as a certified plant killer with a brown thumb, like, if anyone didn't want to date me because I couldn't take care of a plant, like, I would be single forever. And Harper is living with Yasmin and Seb, so she hears some of this. And clearly Yasmin's venting about it a little bit to Harper. And Harper says, Seb is probably just, quote unquote, testing your boundaries. And I think that's an interesting framework to think about the rest of the episode, to think about the boundaries that these characters do and do not set for themselves, and how other people test them. Because if Seb is testing her boundaries about a plant, she's testing his boundaries by sending naked photos to her coworker.
To some other guy.
Exactly.
Seriously. Yes. So basically, in the morning, as they're walking to work, they're talking, and they both obviously have situations with their respective, in one case, boyfriend, in the other case, ex-boyfriend. Harper gets this text from her ex-boyfriend, this guy Todd, who's in town for a few days, and she's ignoring him, but we're going to get to meet him. And so now we're back at the office, Jen, and I'll let you discuss the Italian Brexit.
Yeah, so the morning meeting opens with Daria asking specifically what the chances are of an Italian Brexit. And so when we use the term Brexit, it's become a popular term that's now jargon for kind of anyone exiting the EU. So at various times of financial and political stress, there have been questions about additional countries beyond just England leaving the EU. Now, because it's finance, we love jargon. And so you got to come up with like a good portmanteau. So back in the day.
The heck is portmanteau? I'm like learning new words.
Portmanteau is a combination of 2 words to make. So Brexit is British exit. And that's how you get that name, right? So for those of you who like weren't paying attention to the news, there were all kinds of different rumors. There was Grexit, which would have been Greece, right? But they actually had some really good ones. So Italian Brexit was Italy, which I think is fabulous.
That's so much better.
Okay, there was Goodbye Ireland, which amazing. And then my personal favorite, Check Out, which I think is
for Czechoslovakia, trying to get.
Well, Czechoslovakia has not been a country for a very long time, but the Czech Republic, yes, there was.
Sorry,
they would leave at some point. So yeah, so That's basically the gist of all you need to know. Is at one time there was some discussion about Italy leaving. Italy is the third biggest country economically within the EU behind Germany and France. So an Italy exit would have been disastrous for the shared currency and the banking system as a whole. So the reason that everyone in the sales and trading division cares about it is because, okay, this is going to mean something very significant for where the euro is trading relative to other currencies. And back in my day, right, actually, we knew a world before the euro, before the shared currency. So all of these countries had their own currency that they traded in, right? You had Deutschmarks, things like that. All of those things traded relative to one another. If you were to have one of the member countries exit, that contributes both economically, but you also then have the question of, okay, what's going to happen to the currency? And we know that they specialize a lot in FX at this firm. Sorry,
well, quick question. Yeah, because I do remember even when Britain was part of the EU, they still had sterling.
They kept their own
but
currency.
Did any of the other countries, like does Germany have their own currency, or are they all, everything is gone and it's just the euro?
Everything is gone and it's just the euro. Britain was the only one.
Okay, understood. They do say that the fact that there is a vote on the table in and of itself is worrying. So next thing, the head of the program, Sarah, comes over and basically tells everyone that there is this article that is going to be published that is not flattering at all. And so as they're in this morning meeting, Eric comes and pulls Harper out and says he's going away to a management offsite for a few days. But he wants Harper to basically get in front of Phelim, which, if you remember, he was one of Eric's main clients, contributed a shit ton of money to the desk profits, and he has basically decided he doesn't want to trade with them because of something that Eric said to his wife, which pissed off his wife, and so he's going with somebody else. And so he says that his new coverage, meaning Phelim's new coverage, whoever they're working with, has him on the wrong side of the trade. He's very short euros. And actually, Jen, can you explain just really quickly, like being short euros, how that fits into this whole trade with the Italy referendum?
So if Italy leaves, that's going to destabilize the euro. So if you have a big economic producer leaving the Eurozone, that's going to destabilize the overall economic picture. And then if you have to then break up this currency even further by removing one of the contributing economies, that's going to destabilize the euro, the currency itself, not just the Eurozone economy.
So basically, because Harper says everyone is that way, why do you think it's wrong? Meaning they were shorting
euros.
It. Yes. But so basically Eric is saying he doesn't think that Italy is going to leave and that everything's going to be okay.
Well, so what Eric says, his exact language is important here. He says, because I've looked and the smartest hedgies. Now, I've never actually heard hedge funds called hedgies before, so I don't know if that's a UK thing. But he says, are buying small clips of euro, meaning they think the upcoming vote will keep Italy in the euro. And he says, I don't have to know what they know to act. I just have to know where to look. That's edge. That's sales. And by the way, he is 100% right. It is research's job to come up with what the quote unquote facts are. It's sales' job to look at the flows and interpret what they're telling you. Remember in the last episode where Harper built her own non-farm payrolls model? We're not doing that, okay? We're talking to the smartest people in the world and seeing what weighted coins they are flipping. And that's what Eric's doing. He's saying, hey, listen, everyone's saying, oh my God, Italy's going to leave, blah, 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 blah. But no one's trading that way. Like the smart guys that I know are doing something else. So what do they know, right? And that's what he's interpreting.
Got it. So Harper then says, well, what do you want me to do? He says, get a face-to-face. Harper says, what about his wife? And Eric says, it's not a problem if you cover him. He'll only hear your voice. So she asks him, well, great. How do I get in front of him? And he basically replies, we both know what you're capable of. Don't let me down.
Well, yeah. So Eric is basically trying to pink wash this whole relationship with Phelim by saying, if I put this female analyst in front of him and everything that I'm trying to communicate comes through her, then what's the problem? I get all the spoils, right? The firm gets the relationship, but we don't have to deal with the complex relationship between me and Phelim. And when Eric says, we both know what you're capable of, that definitely seems to have the dual meaning of you are smart and you can solve problems. And he has shown her that he has
you're a
faith
liar.
in her. But also, you're ruthless, right? And you've done questionable things for your own advancement. So please apply that same principle to solving my problem.
We're going to talk more about that. But okay, so next scene, Robert is in Amsterdam on his first business trip with his boss, Clement. They're meeting Casper, obviously Clement's biggest client, actually only client, and his number 2, Usman. Robert wakes up in a bathtub. Usman is passed out on a couch, like they've been partying together. And Robert leaves a note saying, I will say you're ill, because they're now all going to meet at a breakfast with Usman's boss, Casper, and then obviously Robert's boss. So we're going to see that.
Yeah, Robert's little wake-up scene there was a nice inverse American Psycho. Instead of the, fitness routine and the skincare, it looks like he's just had the roughest night out.
Yep.
And he's got Yasmin's naked photos to wake up to. Just blech.
Yep. So next scene, we see Yaz, who's now talking to Maxim. Maxim, if you remember, he's the one who has this spin out from Brevin, and he's launching his own fund, and they get together over this casual coffee, and they go back and forth between Spanish and English. And then she says, all right, well, I know you're done fundraising, and asks what their mandate is. He says broadly FX, but if we have a view, we'll put it on.
Yeah, if they want to take a directional view on, say, interest rates or something like that, they can probably do that, even though their mandate isn't fixed income oriented.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so she says, well, I could do an intro for you to Peerpoint. And Maxim says, sure.
What he says is, what's the point in having a network? Right? So basically, we've talked about networking a ton on the Big podcast. But this is how networking works. It's taking relationships, right? She's had a family relationship with him. They go way, way, way back. And it was never a business relationship. And we always talk about how networking is this misnomer that everyone thinks it's like, I need to meet people to form business relationships. And it's like, no. You form relationships. And then one day you may monetize those for a business purpose. And so he says it kind of like, this is part of the give and take of how these things work. And that's all part of the game. And so I think that was a really important line.
Love it. And so he then brings up this Guardian article, which, like we said, is obviously not great. And Yaz asks, is it bad? Maxim goes, the rats are leaving the ship, to which Yaz replies in Spanish, so hop aboard. And you'll see this later where she continually tries to almost like hang and not look like she's, I don't want to say a prude. That's the wrong word.
No. I think that's a great word. I totally.
Like trying to kind of like laugh off things that are potentially problematic because she just doesn't want to be seen as a prude. So,
well, she also realizes, by the way, that the woman who wrote the article was on her desk. And actually, it was the woman who gave her the death glare in the first episode when she handed her a coffee. She's like, here, I got an extra. And the woman was like, I know. Like, how dare you?
Which is ironic.
By the way, when they're in the sales meeting and the article first comes out, there's a great off-camera line from Rishi who goes, well, I don't recognize her, which is like probably part of why she was pissed off, right? Like, your biggest trader at the firm doesn't even recognize this woman who was living and dying by this firm and eventually had to get herself out. And Rishi's like, nope, never seen her before in my life.
All right. So next scene, Robert's scarfing down breakfast and Clement and Casper walk in. And he says, oh, it's not like Usman to be late. To which Robert says, obviously trying to cover for him, well, he called me and said he had a bug, some rogue prod. And then the boss replies in
he says an incredibly racist comment that implies that Usman doesn't know how to use indoor plumbing that we will not repeat.
We will not.
But
and it's wildly offensive. And Robert and Clement nervously laugh. Clement looks very uncomfortable, actually, in that scene.
Wow,
and Robert,
they both look visibly uncomfortable, but they're like, tee-hee, ha-ha.
Right. Like you're
what the client says.
Yes.
Which is setting up this theme again of boundaries that they don't stand up to him. They don't say like, hey, but of course, Robert is covering for Usman saying he has food poisoning. So he's already lying. So he's not going to correct the guy, but it's a very uncomfortable scene to watch.
Yes. So now we're back in the office, the next scene, back in London, and Kenny is standing up reading from this article, this Guardian article. And his boss, whose name is Hillary, pipes in trying to ask Kenny, who's like, that's silver kite fund. Does anyone have any color? So Yasmin perks up because she's like, oh, like I literally just talked to him and I have an in. But Kenny's sitting there ignoring Hillary reading. And Hillary then says again, can someone make an introduction? This looks sizable, Kenny. Kenny's still ignoring him, like whatever, reading from the Guardian article, just not paying attention. And then Hillary walks up to him and berates him, screams in his face, saying, can you maybe originate something, or are you just an execution monkey? Have you brought in a single account since you made VP? And Yaz then pipes in and she's like, hey, I have an in with Brevin or Silverkite. And so Kenny then asks, how? And to which she then explains, well, I had a coffee with them and I pitched us. They're sizable, vanilla and derivs. And then Hillary says, great, really great. Set up a sit down with you and Kenny. And then he says, as an add-on, if I hear another word about this article, someone's going to have a real fucking problem. So Kenny sits down, obviously just having been publicly berated in front of the entire team, the entire floor. Yaz has made herself look good, which she's done her job. But like Kenny is clearly pissed, which is going to be
So let's talk about what he's actually reading in the article. He says he's reading aloud and he reads a line that says, at once I found myself in situations beyond my control whilst being imprisoned within a prison of my own complicity. And he goes, does anyone know what the fuck that means? While the camera is zoomed in on Yasmin's face, clearly showing that's how she feels working for Kenny. And everyone is sitting there trashing the woman who has written this article, the other female. I still don't know the name of that other woman on the FX desk who sits behind Kenny, who's always piping in. But she jumps on board and she's like, yeah, she was always trying to bro down. I heard her refer to the quant team as quote unquote 50 Shades of Yellow, meaning this woman was trying to make racist jokes about the quants all being Asian, I presume. And Kenny goes, actually, I think that was you. And she's like, yeah, well, she fucking laughed. They're all sitting talking trash about this woman who has left and written this expose in The Guardian. And this is exactly what happens whenever someone leaves a firm on not great terms. Everyone immediately trashes them, or God forbid anyone comes out and says something negative in the press afterwards. I think you guys have noticed maybe in the way we talk about our firms, like I think we're very fair, right? But I would never trash anyone. And also like, I don't really have anyone to trash. I think we can have like thoughtful criticisms of how people behaved, but I would never be like, these people were awful, blah, 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 because it's so much more nuanced than that. But true story, I worked for several people who had come from a previous firm earlier in their careers. And one of their former coworkers was a young woman who exited the industry and wrote a book called Bond Girl. And it was supposed to be like a tell-all expose. And it was about the guys, even though they weren't explicitly named. I think she used pseudonyms. It was about the guys that I was working for at the time when the book came out. And I remember like the clenched jaws around the trading floor when news broke that this book was going to come out of like, oh God, how bad is it going to be? And it really wasn't, to be honest. Like there was nothing super damning in it, but there was all this talk in kind of the weeks leading up to it, not necessarily from the guys I worked for, but from everyone around being like, and no one had anything nice to say about this woman. And I'm sure she was fine. I'm sure she wasn't like some bad actor. I'm sure she wasn't particularly incompetent. But there was almost this move within the industry to discredit her, knowing that this book was going to come out, to try to minimize the blow if there was anything particularly damning in the book, which there wasn't, to be honest, and in my view, at least. I read it. But yeah, so this is something that very, very much happens when people leave. And just generally speaking, people burn bridges behind them. And that's what this article is.
Yes. Okay. So now we're in Gus's row. And so Eric's line rings. Remember, Eric is off in this offsite. So Eric's line rings and Gus, who kind of is like homeless right now. Remember, he was in IBD. He had a ton of promise. He then got put under Clement. Clement has almost like chosen Robert because he was able to get Usman. And Gus he has nobody looking out for him, but he's trying to do his job. And he does the logical thing. Like the phone rings, you pick up the phone.
Not just the logical thing, the required thing. That is your job. You never let a phone ring more than once on these desks.
So Harper runs over to him saying, who told you could answer Eric's line? And so Gus says, well, do you want us to miss business so you can keep each other's monopoly? And Daria pipes in saying, look, we're a team. We answer each other's lines. So Harper then sits down. Daria asks her what Eric had taken her out of the morning meeting to talk about. And Harper lies and just says some account management stuff. Daria says, well, it sounds very clandestine, then offers her a coffee. And so she then looks up and tries to call Phelim's number. They rebuff her, basically saying, I've been told explicitly not to put through anyone from PurePoint. So then Harper drafts an email to him, initially with the title Italy Eurozone. Daria comes over with the coffee, and as she's sitting there basically pouring milk into her coffee, Harper gets an idea. So if you remember in that first episode, Jen, you had commented that it was very strange that Phelim was drinking a glass of milk.
Phelim was drinking a glass of milk at the meeting in episode 2. Yeah, which was bizarre.
Yes, which seems to just be his thing because we see him later drinking milk. So, So she then, as she's typing this email, she decides instead of Italy Eurozone, I'm going to title it cold milk, right? And then in the body, she says, Eric knows your new coverage is putting themselves first. Want to know how I know? And then hit send. And also looks up some guy who we're not sure at this point who he is.
Luke is the assistant whom she called. She got the assistant on the phone who said, I've been told not to put through any calls. She's not going to take that at face value. So that's why she starts stalking him on Instagram to try to track down where he hangs out.
I figured out later that I made that connection. I didn't realize that like he actually announced his name on that call. But yeah, so basically this guy, Luke Beaumont, who's on Instagram, she's trying to find him. Again, trying to somehow get a face-to-face with Fellum.
Is his name really Luke Beaumont?
Beaumont. I read it down. Beaumont. Whatever. Okay, for the record, we haven't talked about our background. Jen was freaking English literature. I was engineering. So I have no sense of geography.
We have shared failings when it comes to geography. Yours seem to be more pronounced than mine.
Oh, I'm terrible. I'm really good at mathy stuff, but geography, pronunciation, spelling. I'm sorry, just no, I can't do that.
Not passions of yours.
No. So the next scene, now we are back in Amsterdam with Clement and Robert, and now they're in the cab. And Clement says, first business trip is always a baptism. Did Usman leave satisfied? And Robert replies, Casper isn't a very modern man, clearly disturbed by what he had said. And so Clement then says, well, open up any Dutch newspaper. He's more modern than you think. And then Robert asks, well, do you always agree with everything he says? Clearly, again, disturbed by this commentary. And Clement just ignores the question. And then changes the subject, and Robert asks if Clement has seen the article. But Jen, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about just business trips in general.
Well, yeah. So first of all, in New York City, if you are working at a bulge bracket investment bank, it is unlikely that you are going to travel a ton if you are in a sales and trading role. You may travel more at the senior levels in IBD. But
I was going to say in banking, you could, if you are working on, for example, an IPO, if there's a roadshow, then yes, you'll have to go if you're the junior analyst, like you are going to travel around. A roadshow is basically when the management team sits down with all the various institutional investors, the pension funds, endowments all over, and you go, it's exhausting. You're going to like a whole bunch of different cities in the course of like a couple of days, meeting with all these people. So you might there, but then again, to your point, Jen, in a sales and trading role, much less common.
It's less common. It's not unheard of. And for example, if you're covering, say, Latin America, if you are covering all of the big super sovs, if you are covering China, right? Like there's a whole number of different roles where you might be traveling, but it just isn't a big part of your day-to-day life in a sales and trading role in New York City. In other cities where you aren't in arguably the biggest financial hub where most of your clients are, travel is a much more common part. And especially in London, you're going to be traveling all around Europe to visit various clients. So that's very, very common. I personally didn't travel much for work because most of my clients were New York based. And even when they weren't, it was like they were coming to New York for things. Like they'd come and meet with a bunch of the different banks all in one trip versus us going and traveling around and meeting with them. But I did start traveling more when I started covering all of the Canadian accounts. So I was covering a lot of the Canadian pensions, a lot of Canadian banks, things like that. And I remember one business trip, one of my first times to Montreal. If you guys have never been to Montreal,
I haven't.
It is a wonderful city. To me, it reminds me of Paris, but colder. And and most everyone speaks English, which is great. I loved it. But so I went with one of our treasury traders at the time who was Canadian. And in passport control, we're like walking through and he's like, hey, if anyone asks, just tell them I'm a mathematician. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, no, I'm here on like a mathematician's visa or whatever versus like a trading visa. And I was like, oh my God, I'm being like asked to lie in passport. Like, of course it never came up or whatever. But so I was like utterly terrified going through passport control. And when we were scheduled to come back on a Friday, and
I have a story about this.
We stayed out so late that it was like, oh my God, and the head of the treasury desk found out that we were taking like the 7:30 a.m. flight back. And he was like, if you don't take the 6 a.m. flight back because I know there's an earlier flight. You're going to come back and not have a job. And like, we were not analysts at the time. This was like at the VP level hazing. Okay.
Wow.
So we basically like walked out of a Montreal bar and onto the plane. And I remember sitting there with the barf bag, just like holding onto it for dear life. I brought the barf bag straight to the desk and like held it in my lap the whole day, being like, please don't throw up, please don't. And the kicker was, by the way, the head of the Treasury desk didn't show up that day. Like, he took the day off. So it was just like total unnecessary hazing. But like these big business trips or whatever, like my experience was somewhat akin to Robert's without the bathtub because I never made it back to the hotel room pretty much. But like they can be absolutely wild, tons of late nights out. And they can also be very tame. They can be like, oh, we had a very nice dinner and made it back to our hotel room. So it could go both ways.
Very funny you mentioned that visa thing in Canada. So I did not travel, I think, at all when I was at Morgan Stanley. When I was working in training, I traveled everywhere, Hong Kong, Paris, freaking Hawaii. Like, I mean, you name it, I've been to pretty much everywhere. Canada, let me tell you. So when you go to Canada, like they are very strict. And I was teaching CPPIB. And at the time, I show up at the airport. I was flying into Billy Bishop. And the immigration people were like, what are you here for? You need a visa. And I freaked the frick out. I call my employer. They get on the phone with CPPIB. And long story short, the immigration officer F's up. They write that I worked for CPPIB, which I didn't. I was there as a consultant. So I get there. And then it becomes another shit show. My boss calls me. They're like, you can't go back. You can't go back to the US. They had to basically sort out with immigration lawyers to fix the fuck up that the immigration people did. On top of that, like under NAFTA, you absolutely are allowed. I think it's like you can go for up to 2 weeks every 6 months, something. So like under NAFTA, I definitely could have gone in. So what happened is that I was basically trapped in Canada. And then towards the end of the trip, that's when I first found out I was pregnant. It was like the most stressful time of my life, but I was very traumatized by the Canadian immigration. So anyway, back to the story at hand, which is the actual show. Yeah, so back at the office. So Yasmin is handing out food while Kenny is booking a place for dinner. And Yasmin basically offers to book the place. She's like, look, Maxim is kind of a foodie, which Kenny basically is being very snippy. And he's like, well, I've booked a steak place that I like for 6 p.m. tomorrow. So
yeah,
Yasmin's
zero
like,
creativity implied. No, like that's just like the baseline standard investment in dinners at a steakhouse.
That I like, not that the client likes, which was also, I thought, an interesting thing. I booked a place that I liked. So Yas then says, oh, so you've already reached out. And Kenny replies, sorry, I must have forgotten to have CC'd you. I'll send you the address. And then Yas kind of perks up. She's like, oh, so I can come? And Kenny says,
like, she feels like he's stomping all over the relationship, right?
Yes.
But she's like, oh, so you're saying there's a chance. Like I haven't been completely cut out. That is how low her expectations have been managed down for how she's being treated on this desk.
And so Yaz again is happy. And she goes, guess my salad days are over. And to which he basically just makes a snarky comment, like, bit of a foodie, is he? And we'll see how he is horrible about that later. But so now Yaz and Harper and Robert all show up in the kitchen together. Robert says, if you put my liver in a jar, you could charge people to see it. And then asks, do you want to get one tonight to Harper? And she says no, she has a work thing, plus her ex is in town. Robert offers to come to be a buffer if she wants. Harper's like, nah, it's fine. And Yasmin walks off because I think she like toying with Robert, but I also don't know if she likes to necessarily see Harper and Robert have a even like friendship. And Harper then asks, have you slept together yet? Because if not, please just do it and get it over with. And it's kind of a throwaway scene, but it does just set up.
It isn't. I mean, I remember like, meeting up with my now husband in the little coffee room. And then, by the way, their coffee room is gorgeous, okay? The coffee room at my firm was like this incredibly sad converted closet, effectively, where with like a Keurig machine. Like it was terrible. But like, that's where those office flirtations used to happen.
Jen's like has like fond memories.
Fond memories of the sad coffee room. But yeah, it was the kind of thing where you'd be like making coffee and you'd like look over at them and they'd look over at you and then you go back to your desk. Like there's, you know what I'm saying? What are you going to say? Like, hey, baby. Like.
So yeah, so next scene, Yaz in the tub. This was such a bizarre scene. Like basically watching the Robert video and then it goes to Bluetooth. So then Harper and Seb are in the kitchen. Like it was very awkward, but it was just, I think it was there for comic relief, to be honest.
Yeah, they're advancing Yasmin's romantic line with Robert, like at our expense.
Yes.
By the way, that we sound like such prudes? Like we're like she's in the bath watching a dirty video of Robert and it goes on the Bluetooth. Y'all, like, listen, I'm here for the finance. I'm into the Robert and Yasmin storyline, and I like the will they won't they. I'm totally into that. I really don't want to sound so dismissive of it. I really just want Seb gone. Like, Seb ruins everything for me.
Seb does suck. We don't like Seb. But so now we're back at Gus and Robert's place, and Gus asks Robert how Amsterdam was. And so Robert says good. He always wanted to travel for work. And Gus then replies, don't buy everything he sells you, meaning Clement. And Robert then says, well, he's taking me to get a suit fitted for tomorrow.
Gus is like, yeah, that's totally normal. That is not normal, okay? No, the boss does not take you to get a suit fitted in the real world. This is like old school, like when you watch mob movies, right? And the guy's finally getting made, like in the scene where they take him to the tailor, like now you can, whatever. Like, this does not happen in the real world. This isn't a normal kind of relationship to have. And it speaks to, why would Clement be taking Robert to get a suit fitted? Well, Robert doesn't have a properly fitting suit because Robert doesn't have any money to his name. He doesn't know where to shop. He's not in the know. And Clement has positioned himself as this mentor father figure who knows all the ropes, who's been around since the dawn of time and has this pedigree. And so a suit for a lot of men is kind of a pedigree symbol. I think less and less as we move away from business formal in the office, but having a properly tailored suit was one of those hallmarks of you've made it for a guy back in the day.
I don't know. I still think it is. I mean, we talked about this.
It is for some.
I feel like in this industry, especially if you're in a sales role and you're entertaining clients, like, people notice what you wear. They notice how you're dressed. They notice how you present yourself. I do think if you are meeting clients, it does make sense. Even now, I still think for business meetings, having at least one nice suit. I mean, we're going to have an episode on the big podcast we recorded this week just about the impact that, like, how you dress has not only on how others perceive you, but on how, like, you perceive yourself, how you present yourself, how your confidence is. So I do think that the whole thing is wildly messed up, but there is something that's actually kind of nice about the protectiveness that Clement is starting to feel over Robert, because as we're going to talk about, they have a shared background in the sense that they both were low class and they both have had to overcome that.
I do agree with you about looking presentable and fitting in a way being an important part to some extent. The difference is, I think, getting a Brooks Brothers suit and having it properly tailored versus a custom suit that's going to cost easily a four-figure purchase.
Yes. Well, that's what they said. They literally quote this later, that it was $4,250, so $4,250. You could do it for $4,000, but we'll get there. But yes.
Yeah.
So next scene, Harper now goes to a club where she's meeting the guy who she was looking up on Instagram.
She's tracked him down from Instagram, right? She saw where he hangs out and she's stalking him. So she's using that persistence that Eric did praise her for,
which it was smart.
Resourcefulness. Very smart.
It was very smart.
So she goes up, and the guys who are all there from the hedge fund world have one of the private VIP tables in a roped off area. Harper walks in. She doesn't have access to this area. They recognize her. They're like, oh, Pierpoint girl. And they wave her in, but then they go, sell side girls pour drinks. So they are shitting on her, right? It's gentle ragging or whatever, but it's like, oh, you on the sell side service us. And she has a pretty quick comeback, right? She's like, your bosses call me and I take their money. But just to be clear, we've talked about the hierarchy within the sell side, within an investment bank. We haven't talked about the hierarchy of buy side versus sell side. And so you guys have seen, right, in watching this show, everyone is falling all over their clients. So when we say buy side and sell side, overall in the context of Wall Street, when we say sell side, we mean investment banks. We mean the people who are providing services in exchange for a fee. The buy side is all of the people who are purchasing those services. They are buying the advice. They are paying for the liquidity and access to the capital markets that they're giving them a trading. The buy side tends to look down on the sell side because it's like, these are the people who work for us. We pay their salaries, blah, blah, blah. Now, to Harper's point, Harper is like, I look down on everybody. I think I'm better than everybody. Yes. I take your boss's money. So she doesn't feel any shame, but she's working this. And so that's how she gets inroads in. They recognize her, but they are looking down on her, even though, to her point, these are the junior guys at the hedge fund. These aren't the portfolio managers. These aren't the fund managers. These are most likely junior portfolio managers or traders, people who are focused more on execution. Or in the case of Luke, whom she's Luke Beaumont, who I'm not going to call him that, Mr. Beaumont. Luke Beaumont. He's basically an administrative assistant, but he's not responsible for any P&L. So I just wanted to set that scene.
Oh, 100%. So she basically is trying to now get in Phelim's calendar. So she asks Luke if she can get 5 minutes with Phelim. And he's like, no work chat. So then some obnoxious guys, again, part of that buy-side brigade, right? They have a bottle. And Luke, he goes up and tries to get a pour of the champagne. And the dude replies, only guys who make investment decisions drink for free, not desk assistants. So Harper then sees an in. She's like, well, Pierpoint can get you a bottle. And she says, but in return, I want 5 minutes with Phelim. Luke replies, well, he won't speak with Arab. Harper tells him, well, just put me in his calendar and I'll take care of the rest. And Luke says, well, he won't see anyone below VP. So Harper decides to include Daria because, again, she is a VP. And actually, sorry, one quick I'm going to put a pin in this for 1 second. So we had a conversation in a prior episode about how usually it goes VP to then ED or some level in between then to MD. Shout out to my husband who shot me a note saying that some firms, so for example, at Goldman, you do go VP to MD because then they also have the partner level. So just an interesting point. I wanted to back up to that. So Daria is a VP and he says, look, I can get you 10 minutes at noon. And she's like, great. So the calendar has been set. She's got an in with Phelim at noon. And at this point, that ex that we knew was in town, this guy Todd, basically shows up.
Before we get to Todd, one other thing. This also speaks to the amount of power that these people in these administrative roles sneakily have.
Yeah.
Because this guy, Luke, the administrative assistant who is only adjacent to P&L in the mind of all the junior traders and portfolio managers, he's the one who's getting Harper that access. So for all these guys who are ragging on him for being at the bottom of the totem pole, we actually made a silly reel about this the other day, but it's 100% true. The person you never, ever, ever, ever are rude to or piss off is the admin, because they know where all the bodies are buried. They have operational control of everything behind the scenes. And they are the ones who are the gatekeepers of access to senior people. If they don't like you and they think you're disrespectful, they will not help you out. And so Harper knows what side her bread is buttered on. And that's why she's like, oh, I'll make you feel special. I'll get you a bottle if you'll do me this favor. And for him, because he never gets treated like the client, that means something. For a portfolio manager or one of these big fund managers, they don't give a shit about a bottle with a bunch of sparklers at a club. They could have that a million times
they're
over.
They're getting it from all their clients all the time anyway.
Sell side. They're getting it from all of their coverage.
Oh, sorry, not clients. Yes, from their coverage. Sorry. Yes.
It means, and it just means nothing to them. Whereas this guy, this is a big deal, right? This is, I'm special now. Like I matter.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So now on to Todd.
Oh, yeah. So then Harper's ex Todd shows up.
Todd calls Harper's work outfit a disguise. He's like, oh, look at you here in your disguise. Now, we know she has been ghosting him and hiding him. He literally tracked her location to find her at this club, which is like, okay, is this romantic or is this creepy? But there will be an ongoing theme between Todd and Harper of, is this the real you? Is the Harper working for Pierpoint the real Harper? So I just wanted to point out that little comment that he made of like, oh, you're here in your disguise, like you're around all these finance bros. That's not the real you. I know the real you is what he's implying.
So then next thing they're back at her house or Yasmin's house, where she's living. He's trying to apologize. And she says, do you even know what you're sorry for? And so this is where we first get some more color about what happened with her not graduating from college. And so she tells the story about how she was in her final, like her last final. So it seems like she was very close to graduating and had some kind of panic attack. So we know that something happened with her brother where her brother left and didn't come back. And now she had some sort of panic attack. She says she got out of the final, walked for 3 miles, went to a Chinese restaurant and tried to call him and he didn't answer. And we don't really get a resolution about this, but they end up sleeping together, whatever. Anything else you wanted to include on that?
For whatever reason, I kind of just don't care about this whole plot line.
I feel like it was one of those things where they set up the initial pilot. They'll have some sort of thing in the pilot that then it's like, oh, this has become about something so much else, but we still have this loose end we have to wrap up.
It feels like a soap opera plot line. Like, is her brother secretly her twin in a coma? Like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm annoyed.
It's not, I agree. So now they are back at the office and Daria gets this calendar reminder, which pops up and she's like, why do I have a 12 p.m. with Phelim? So Harper lies and says, oh, that's a mistake. She's like, I was out with his assistant. He got drunk. He was trying to help, put the meeting in the calendar. And Daria's kind of like, okay. So I don't know. We're not sure if she buys it, but yet to be seen. Next scene, Clement is now with Robert, taking him to get this suit.
So Robert is getting fitted for the suit and looks transformed. And Clement is sitting there looking at him saying, and they say social mobility is a myth, meaning it's not a myth. Here you are. You've come up in the world, you from this lowly background. And he says it in a Scottish accent. And so this is this realization moment for Robert that Clement's been putting on a front of having this posh British accent when he's secretly Scottish. Now, I don't know enough about how the hierarchy
That's what I was curious about.
The UK. Like, to me, that wasn't a gotcha moment at all. I was like, I didn't even notice, to be honest, until Robert reacted.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because then it also comes up later with Kenny being Irish. And there probably is, and obviously we are American.
The Irish thing on Wall Street is like the way people talk about being Irish on Wall Street, especially in the context of drinking, is something that is very common.
Yes.
Yeah, you hear that in a lot of actually like off-camera dialogue about Morgan Stanley being like a whole Irish, whatever. But this specific posh British versus Scottish accent is something that I just don't have the social and historical context on.
So by the way, if you guys do, send us a message. Our London
I think
friends.
we get the gist.
Well, we get it. But again, like I'm curious if there's like actually some kind of internal feeling that you have if you're Scottish, that you're somehow not as posh as the people who are in the UK. Or no,
I guess kind of the analog to an American trading floor would be someone with like a very deep Southern accent that, you know, sometimes you cannot understand, right? Like someone coming from Appalachia or like rural South, right?
Yeah.
I guess feigning a very proper American accent, or maybe even like a deep Boston accent. But to be honest, I actually think people like things that make them stand out. So we've talked about that too. Yeah. So to be honest, in the trading floor culture that I experienced, I don't think anyone would give a shit if you have a Scottish versus a British versus a Southern versus a Northern accent.
They don't care.
Like, no. Or maybe it's something that you and I don't perceive because we aren't in that position. And you and I both have very neutral accents. It's funny. I get all the time, oh, you've developed a Southern accent. I'm like, I don't think so. Like, I don't think you've heard a Southern accent.
Well, people say that
because I have a Southern accent.
I mean, it's funny because both of us grew up in Boston. My dad grew up on the Cape and his brother has a very thick Boston accent, but like none of his other siblings do. But I'll have to ask Brian. So my brother is living in Scotland right now, so I'll ask him.
Yeah, ask him. He'd be great great to add perspective.
Yeah. And so Robert then says, "You're Scottish," and Clement says, "We all have our stealings." And so Robert says, "Well, what do you get out of this, bringing me here?" And Clement then tells the story. He said, "What's your old man in? I didn't speak to my father for the last 20 years of his life." And Robert says, "I'm not close to my dad." And so then Clement tells the story. He says his dad oiled his hair with Brill cream and brushed his teeth with Colgate. And one time, Clement switched the tubes. He says all you need to know about him is once he finished brushing his teeth, he then combed the toothpaste through his hair. And Robert says, well, you never talk about where you're from. So Clement basically goes, it gets to the point where they stop asking, but they never stop caring. Kind of like you can look the part that you are advancing and that you're now higher status, whatever, but people know where you came from, which I don't know. I mean, maybe because we're in the US, like that's not really the case. If you are able to go from a lower class background and then you make a ton of money, like people don't care. I will say maybe in like the New York scene, there's like the old money, new money, but I don't know. I just don't think people care.
And that's everywhere. But yeah, I do think, in the very first episode, Harper talked about why she wanted to be in this role because she viewed it as kind of like the last pure meritocracy. Mm-hmm. And social mobility through these roles is something we talk about all the time, that working hard in these industries can be a path to social mobility. And these ceilings that he's talking about, having not perceived that I ever had a ceiling, rightfully or wrongfully, maybe I had ceilings all over the place that I didn't know about, but I never felt that way. And I really hope that, to me, I feel like the show is almost creating a level of classism within the industry that I just never perceived.
I
having
didn't either.
known too people from all kinds of backgrounds. And so, I mean, Maybe this is a UK versus American thing. I'm just not sure because this is a very specific UK thing that they're getting at here. But to me, this feels more like Hollywood than it does real Wall Street.
But again, if this is in fact a true representation, please let us know. I'm curious if this is something that like is a cultural thing in the UK or if it's more just Hollywood. So anyway, so now the suit guy comes out. This is what we were talking about, like the price. So it's $4,250. I can do it for $4. And Robert's like, this is out of my price range. And so Clement then replies, yes, alas, Georgie, we're in an age of deferred bonuses and payment in stock, which actually I do want to touch on. But then he hands the sales clerk a credit card and says, I need to go pay Mrs. Winslow. So a lot to talk about here.
Yeah, the structure of investment banking compensation is something that we've touched on here briefly, but prior to the global financial crisis, it used to be that you got paid primarily both salary, so that kind of standard guaranteed upfront compensation that you get for your work, which is relatively low, and bonus, which is the performance-based compensation that's doled out every year, sometime between, call it January and March, for the prior year's work. Both of those used to be predominantly paid in cash. Then, as you got more senior, you used to be allocated some portion in stock. And that's a great thing when your company's stock is going up.
Think about like these NVIDIA people who are early NVIDIA employees and now are worth millions and millions of dollars because the value of that compensation has gone through the roof.
That's exactly right. So it was seen as like a great thing to get some stock. Okay. But when you're sitting on the trading floor at Lehman Brothers and you're watching your stock go to zero, I was a junior person at the time. I was a first-year associate. I had been paid only in cash. But everyone around me who was a managing director or more senior, they were watching their net worth completely implode because so much of their net worth was tied to that Lehman stock. And so after the global financial crisis, banks started increasing the percentage of bonuses that were awarded in a combination of deferred cash and deferred stock. So let's say your salary was $200,000 and you got paid a $500,000 performance-based compensation of a bonus. So that's like kind of a VP level comp, call it, in New York City at a bulge bracket bank. That $500,000 might be $100,000 worth of cash today and $200,000 worth of deferred cash that vests over a multi-year vesting period. And you get to invest that in some predetermined set of mutual funds or whatever it is that you can select from within that firm.
Yep.
And then the remaining $200,000 might be deferred stock that also has a vesting schedule of 1, 2, 3 years, et cetera, et cetera. So even though you get a piece of paper in, call it January or February, that says, guess what? For last year's performance, you got paid $500,000 on top of your base salary. It's not like you can go out and write a check for $500,000 that day. You may never write a check for $500,000 because if that stock goes down, which bank stocks are known to do.
Even across the street at Morgan Stanley. I mean, our stock price before the financial crisis, it was like 28. It went down to 7 before we got this investment from Mitsubishi and the share price recovered a little bit. But it was the same thing where you saw all of these MDs, their net worth was being wiped out as well. And a lot of them sold because they were like, I have whatever. I have a mortgage. I have kids going to school. I'm going to need. Yeah. So I'm not going to just sit here they didn't know if Morgan Stanley was going to get wiped out because, by the way, it's a confidence game. That's the thing about like the banking sector. So much of it is confidence. Same thing with SVB. SVB went down partially because there was no confidence left. Everyone tried to pull their money out. It's a run on the bank.
And it's still not to this day. Everyone would rather be paid now in cash, all up front, that they can invest how they see fit. If they choose to buy the stock of that company, that is your choice. Okay, great. I really believe in this company that I'm working for. And it's a way to tie your motivation to the performance of the firm. But like, your motivation is already aligned with the performance of the firm. You're not like going out and trashing the firm because everyone knows you're not going to have a job tomorrow if you fuck it all up. So like, I don't really think we
talk about highly correlated risk. It's like your job is tied to the firm and then all of your investments are
That's exactly right. Your net worth is tied to it. So there's all that. I do want to also point out that after the global financial crisis, there was also a European bonus cap regulation put in place. So a lot of the EU-based banks, it was seen as, oh God, these bankers, their base salary is $200,000, but they're getting paid a $5 million bonus. So they put in place this bonus cap that said, okay, your bonus can only be a certain amount of a multiple over your base salary. So what happened, right? Markets are efficient. In order to compete, these European banks would never have been able to attract the kind of talent that American banks could attract without that bonus cap. So they simply said, we're just going to raise everyone's base salary to $1 million. Yeah. So all of a sudden it was like, wait, now more money is guaranteed up front. It's like, again, just well-intended regulation. Yeah. That's totally, your now incentives are to do nothing all year and just collect a steady stream of paychecks. So everyone complains about the bonus, but the bonus is the incentive stream. You don't need
allows you
additional
to
incentive
pay
streams beyond that.
Yeah, it allows you to have more flexibility. So like,
of course, it allows you to pay people
for the
less.
employer, it's great to be like, you have a low base and then you see how you did at the end of the year and then you can like chew them up. Yeah. It's to your point, like unintended consequences. The term bonus, like it shouldn't be called a bonus because it's not what people normally think of as a quote unquote bonus. It's that there is a fixed rate and there is a variable rate that is performance based on the firm, based on your individual performance. But yes, it is I think a misnomer. Oh, and actually last thing that you didn't mention, but I think is important. This stock-based compensation, the deferred portion, if you don't stay at the firm, if you leave, if you get fired, it's all gone. So like it also becomes now, it's like golden handcuffs. So a lot of bankers are almost like tied to where they work. Because
well, so hang on. If you leave and you get fired are two different things. So if you leave, you're not walking away from all of that unless you're just resigning from the industry altogether, which is what I did. Whoever you're going to has to buy you out and make you whole, or else you're not.
Well, they don't have to, but yes,
you're not going to leave. Yeah,
exactly. No, that's my point. That's my point.
But hang on. Yes. But so if you get fired with cause, it is forfeited. If you get fired in a RIF, in a reduction in force, you are entitled to your deferred compensation.
Oh, I didn't know
that.
So
that's why people will raise their hand when they want to retire, because you can't just retire. Right? You can't quit because then you don't get it. So you have to be riffed in order to get your deferred comp. So I just got it. Sorry, when you say
good point. This part is so strange. So we hear the same phrase that we heard and we talked about previously. Clement says, I need to go now pay Mrs. Winslow. He leaves. Robert follows him and sees Clement shooting heroin in his arm. And I felt like this jumped the shark a little bit. So Clement then says, either come in and shut the door or stay out. So Robert leaves. But like, we talked about like never seeing coke being done. I mean, now he's a heroin addict? Like what?
It seemed so insane to me. I'm totally with you. And we're at the Case conference talking about this show with other people in the industry. And everyone had the exact same reaction. Everyone was like, never once in my career have I seen this. And this was people from the buy side to the sell side, like all over the place. Everyone had the same reaction. So either we're all suffering from this collective hallucination where we somehow strategically are missing the drugs on Wall Street. And I have spoken to people who are like, nope, I've seen it. Here's what I saw. It was not heroin. Like this. It was nothing like people shooting up and then going back to work. This is insane. I'm sorry. Like, this is so extreme. Yes. I mean, it's the idea of someone walking around, because, you know, most people in the trade floor, they roll their sleeves up. Someone coming in with track marks on their arm. Are you kidding me? No. It seems so unrealistic. But we do now have kind of our three protege relationships established. Yes. We've got Clement and Robert, we've got Kenny and Yasmin, and Eric and Harper kind of all fully entrenched in their, you know, master and apprentice roles. All three problematic in their own ways.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But this has kind of cemented that ordering of the relationships.
Yes. So next scene, Harper's in a diner waiting for Phelim. He walks in and Harper says, I remembered you'd be 10 minutes early. And he was like, well, I told there would be someone senior here. And so Harper replies, she couldn't make it. He's like, who the heck is she? She says, a VP on our desk. So the waiter comes, drops off, again, this glass of cold milk and a sandwich. And clearly, Phelim likes milk, which is so random.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I could think of as a creative decision, unless this is like some big reveal later that he like desperately needs calcium and protein or whatever, is that it almost paints this picture of him being very wholesome.
It's like with Mitt Romney. Do you remember Mitt Romney?
I always think of like Forrest Gump drinking a glass of milk. That's what I think of as being like this wholesome thing.
Yes.
And he's the one who is objecting to Eric's subterfuge and manipulation and him doing the wrong thing. And we keep talking about all these boundaries and whether people are setting them or breaking them. Phelim has been the only person who's basically said like, no, I have a very hard no, and you're not getting past it. So sorry, go ahead. That was the only thing I could think of with a glass of milk and why he likes it.
I do think that back to, especially, I mean, we are recording this and it's like 2 weeks before the election. So back when Obama and Romney were running against each other, this is again, US politics, but Mitt Romney was a Mormon. And so like he didn't drink. And it would be all the SNL skits whenever they would like depict Romney. It would always be him there, like, with a glass of cold milk.
Oh, chugging a glass of milk. Oh, yes, right. I forgot that. That's what you saying. Mitt Romney. I was like, what? Oh, yeah.
You're like, what are you talking about? That. No, it's because of the wholesomeness. That's interesting. But isn't there also a saying, like, if you pour a glass of cold milk on something, you're a buzzkill? But maybe that's like
cold water.
Oh, so never mind. Not cold milk. So Harper then says, did you get my email? To which he says, I did. The subject line amused me amongst the deluge, which was, I thought, very clever, right? You're getting all these emails about like the Italy, Brexit, whatever. But then like she sends him a thing that's just cold milk. So Harper then says, look, Eric was desperate to save you from being burned on this Italy thing. And I thought it only right to relay his passion in person. So Harper asks, have you started to unwind your Euro short? And Phelim replies, I can see some teething problems in our new coverage. Harper then says, how has that impacted your bottom line? Phelim just smiles, and Harper suggests, what if going forward, you had every relevant part of Eric's color, but through me as a conduit to Eric without all the hassle? And it seems like she's starting to actually make progress. Like it seems like he's sort of like warming to this idea a little bit until Daria walks in.
Wait, no, I totally disagree.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, I did, but maybe
no,
again, that was
I didn't think he was open to it at all.
Interesting. Okay, well, he's definitely not. But I thought that it was like basically shattered because of Daria. But like from your perspective, it was like she was not going to be making any headway whether Daria came in or not.
That's how I took it. I could be wrong though.
Got it. No, I mean, look, this is why I like talking to you, because there's two different interpretations and we don't know, and they might have wanted to keep that ambiguous. So anyway, so Daria walks in, and to me, it was like the spell is broken. But again, open to interpretation. Phelim says, I know you're a woman at the bottom of this industry, and I sympathize with that. And if anyone knows Eric's powers of persuasion, it's certainly me. But what you think I'm reading as proactivity and good business, I see as someone in his thrall. Daria's just like, what the hell is going on? Like, she has no idea. She's like, did she speak out of turn? Like, what's happening? Phelim just sort of gets up and he's like, look, I have an open tab. Help yourself to lunch. And then he says, it feels like you should probably discuss why I left Pierpoint, because that's clearly been lost in translation. And remember, some things are more important than money. So this is back to what you were talking about before. Like, clearly, like, his motivation, he doesn't care about the bottom line. He's still stuck on what happened with his wife. And to him, his relationship with his wife, morals, all that is more important than just money. Or
right. I mean, imagine the scene with Caspar and Clement and Robert. If Clement had stood up and said, some things are more important than money, how dare you make a racist comment like that, right? We're watching a totally different show if that had happened, and it didn't happen. And Phelim is the only person that I've seen so far who has this ironclad moral code. And I still don't understand the full picture of what Eric said to his wife or implied or whatever. We know that he said something insulting to her in front of a group of people, but this almost implies that there's more to it than just one fuck up on Eric's part. Eric clearly only sees it as that one fuck up. Eric doesn't. Eric thinks that this is the kind of thing that he can overcome by being like, I'm putting a woman in front of you. Like, oh, she's great. She's smart. Like, let's talk markets. Let me appeal to your mathematical logic of I'm going to make you more money. Yeah. I mean, it's very clear that Phelim is much more aligned with the woman writing the expose in The Guardian, that this is systemic toxic culture that he needs to be no part of.
Yep. So back in the Uber or cab or whoever they're getting back to the office, Daria says, I can't believe how easily you would lie to me. And then she asks, is that you or is that him?
Meaning, and by the way, like, I'm sitting there watching being like, please, you have no idea. Like,
I know. You have no idea the extent of like the crazy shit.
Like Harper didn't think twice about that versus the other lies that she's told.
Yeah, no, the wrong way trade. I mean, that was awful. So Daria then says, what did he actually say to Phelim's wife? Which, by the way, Harper doesn't know. We've not been told any of this. And she's like, I don't know where we go from here because I can't work or be friends with anyone who would behave like that. If he is pressuring you, you need to say something. I promise I can understand. And again, Harper just is not saying anything. And Daria adds again, just like this way of doing business, the silos, the possessiveness, the lying, it's got to stop. That article is just the start. This place is going to change. Watch. If you lie to me again, you have no idea how cold the floor can be, and I won't be in your corner come riff. So Harper is in this position where, I mean, for her, like, it's pretty obvious. She has an MD who is like taken under the wing, knows all the skeletons, knows like where the bodies are buried, knows everything she's done wrong, and has been supportive of her, like in a toxic way. Daria, she seems like she's more honest, right? She seems like she like actually wants to do good. Yeah. And again, you can totally understand why she's pissed off at Harper.
Daria has a moral code. Daria is showing that she has, and she's part of this firm. She's part of the culture of the CPS desk. But that tension that you had picked up on earlier has now emerged into like almost a Cold War between her and Eric on two opposite sides now, where Daria is like, we do business as a team. Gus can pick up your phone. We are all part of the same thing. We all have the same goal. Yep. Why are you trying to sabotage that? Whom does that serve?
Right.
And Daria's attitude is much more reflective of kind of the typical culture on one of these sales desks, that your sales credits go next to someone's name, right? Like sometimes it can be two people sharing an account or whatever. There is that bottom line P&L number and sales credit number and all that fun stuff at these firms. At the end of the day, there's one or two VPs on this desk. There's one or two analysts. There's one or two MDs, right? There's only so much that has to be divvied up. Acting in this siloed and possessive manner serves no one.
Yeah. So now we're back at the office, and Eric walks in wearing this purple Pierpoint & Co. sweatshirt that says like management offsite on the back. And he marches up to Gus, who's on his line, and screams at him, why am I getting incoming calls about a grad executing with my clients? And Gus is basically like, well, Harper and Eric were off the desk. And Eric is like, did I tell you could do that? So Gus says, well, check the P&L of the trades. They both made money. And Eric just continues to scream at him and then calls Harper over and says, debrief now. So they go into a conference room. Eric asks if she saw Phelim. She says yes, but that he is not coming back. And so Eric then yells, but he says, it's fine, trying to like calm himself down. But he does say it's going to be very hard to get us all paid without him. Harper then confesses that she thinks she fucked up. And she says Daria was at the meeting with Phelim. At this point, this is where it's like very sketchy. So Eric then goes, closes the blinds and locks the conference room door. And you can tell that Harper is now feeling like very cornered. Eric says, well, what does she know? And Harper says that she had to tell Daria that Phelim left for personal reasons. And Eric says, well, what does that mean? Harper says, because of you. So Eric then says, I heard whispers at the offsite that Sarah wants me gone. Did Daria tell you that? What do you think you've just done to move the dial on their agenda? Do you think either of them would protect you like I have? And Harper says, I told you I couldn't be more grateful. She's just, again, she's sitting there trying to hold back tears, clearly very scared. And Eric says, what do you think your gratitude is worth to me if you can't keep your fucking word? I'm the only one willing to ignore your non-target background, pull you out of wherever, and give you the success that might excuse your personality, the massive chip on your shoulder. You see how I alluded the fact that you're also a fucking liar. Is that how you sustain the illusion that you belong here? And Harper, again, is just like, she's scared. And she finally just says, can I go? Can you let me out? Eric gets up, he unlocks the door and lets her leave. But when he walks out, she's just like hyperventilating. I mean, this whole thing has clearly traumatized her.
So listen, everyone, we've talked about this. Most people that I know, that I've spoken to, that we've interviewed on this podcast throughout the industry, with the notable exception of maybe one, have said that they feel imposter syndrome at some point during their career. Yeah. And Harper is an imposter in many ways. Like, she has falsified her credentials, but like, she deserves to be there were it not for her lying and manipulation and all those things that she's done wrong. But like, listen, she is qualified for this role, right? She is smart enough. Yeah. She gets it. She just has very questionable ethics and stuff like that. But that conversation rung true to me in some ways, of these relationships that you can have with toxic managers, where it's like they have you in their thrall because they are protecting you, and it's an abusive relationship. It's picking at that thread of insecurity that you have, again, Harper's are so extreme and so dramatized that it's like, I'm picking at the thread that you actually didn't graduate and you lied about this and you falsified a trade and you did all these unethical and questionably legal things. Like, you have all these problems. I'm the only thing standing between you and you losing your job. You need to back me up and never question me and have this unquestioning loyalty. And I did have managers where I felt that, where I felt like the only reason I still have a job, the only reason I have any of this is because of this manager. I need to keep their secrets. I need to protect them. Yeah. I need to put myself on the line for them because God forbid anyone finds out what a fraud I am, it'll all unravel. Mm-hmm. And the reality is I think that conversation rings true for so many people who have felt like Harper, but who aren't Harper, right? Who haven't actually done bad things. You just have that imposter syndrome. And Eric is preying on that because he is so concerned about his political position. So he needs this soldier. But it's like, is the right person to defend Eric's political position the most junior person on the desk? No, right? No. So if he, so if he had real power and real influence and was secure in his position at the firm, he would seek to exert that influence over people at comparable levels. And he would be navigating the upper political sphere, not trying to deputize Harper as like this person to be in his corner and to do his dirty work.
The other thing, I just feel so much sympathy with Harper or like Mike in Suits, where it's like, you have these people who are so good at what they do. And especially in the case with Harper, where it's like, she had like literally taken every single class. She was in her last final and then has a panic attack. So for whatever reason, like doesn't graduate.
I also don't understand why she didn't just go back and retake the final. Like, no. I mean, graduate. Like, maybe graduate with like an A- instead of an A. Like this seemed, which is why the whole backstory to me doesn't make any sense. There's something much more nefarious behind it.
Yeah. So that whole part, I was like, okay, so she didn't graduate because she had a panic attack and walked out of a thing. Anyway, like I feel so much sympathy with these people who I'm like, you guys deserve to be there, but like maybe not, because she also like is a liar and she does a lot of really shitty stuff.
Harper's big bad secret being she didn't graduate, I don't care one bit about that. The big bad secret of lying about a trade, that I care about. That's your,
100%. 100%. Yes. So anyways, next scene, Clement is on the phone with Casper. So Robert's on the line. Clement says, if we get you on the right side of this Italy thing, will we get paid? Casper replies, when was the last time you came to Amsterdam and didn't get paid? Also questionable if one of the reasons that Clement and Casper are friends, are they secretly off doing heroin together?
But Clement said that his guy in Amsterdam wasn't there. He said it was either Interpol or fentanyl that got him. I was like,
got it. Okay, so then clearly
not. We know that at least they weren't doing drugs on this trip, and that's why he was so desperate to get his fix.
Got it. Okay, that is a good point. So Clement then does this little little flippity flip thing with a quarter, and he says, remember, it's only addiction. Yeah, it's only an addiction if you can't afford it, which
no, what?
That's not how this works.
Clement's perception of class has totally skewed his moral rubric.
And like the health effects. It's an addiction if it's having a negative effect on your health and your life.
The idea that someone is shooting up heroin and then going and like talking about the markets to me is insane. I don't know enough about what heroin does to you, but like from what I've seen in the movies at least, I don't think it's like let's go back and talk about FX.
No. So, I mean, anytime there is something in the caption, I do think that the writers have purposely put that there.
What was the off-camera dialogue in this point? I didn't even see it.
Blue Horseshoe loves Anacott Steele. So it's a reference to Wall Street, which by the way, I have not seen. So Jen, I was going to say,
I can't believe you knew that reference.
I didn't. I just wrote down what he said and then I looked it up. I'm like, what the heck is this? Because if there's something that's on the closed caption, Greg was saying it, then it's probably important. But I don't know if there was anything specific or if it's just the fact that it's a reference to Wall Street, which is, I need to watch it. No,
they said it was like blue horse cock or something like that. So it's not exactly the quote. It's a modification of it to make it a joke. Yeah. So I took it when I heard it because I did remember hearing that. I didn't write it down. That was a great pull by you. I took it as akin to finance bros quoting American Psycho or making a stupid joke about a classic Wall Street movie. But that is a reference to the insider trading that was happening in the movie at the time. I don't think that there's any insider trading that Greg is participating in again, but that was a reference to a classic Wall Street movie. That's like if you know, you know.
Yep. All right. So now they're in the bathroom. Next scene, Daria and Yaz. Daria says, I hear you're meeting a new fund out of Brevin. I do my homework. Bit of advice. If you sit there like window dressing, it's hard to come back. The quicker you open your mouth, the quicker they know you're an actual human being on top of everything else.
There's so much about that line. First of all, she says, the quicker they know you're an actual human being on top of, looks her up and down everything else. meaning you're not just a pretty face.
Yes.
But also, by the way, Daria and Yasmin are my new favorite couple. All right. So toss everyone else out. They are my new favorite couple in the show.
100%. Yeah.
This is wonderful advice of basically don't just be a pretty face. Exert your power in this dinner because also like you don't get a second chance at a first impression. And she doesn't know that Yasmin has this long-standing relationship with these guys, but it is great advice to a junior person. It reminds me too of how Daria gave advice to Harper at the beginning, giving her that shot at that dinner with the fund manager, Nicole at Malin Mercer. Daria is giving Yasmin the advice that she needs to be successful in coming up as a saleswoman. I feel like Daria is the female mentor that I wish I had in a lot of ways. And I think that she's great.
Well, I will say it does clear up one mystery, seeing how her character arc has progressed, because you had talked about, did she bring her to that dinner knowing that she would get assaulted? Yes. I don't think that's the case.
No, I don't think it is
anymore.
One bit. I also do wonder if they rewrote Daria's character after the pilot.
Maybe.
Because Daria's character is become this like voice of concern and thoughtfulness and mentorship. Whereas in the first episode, she gave off super bitchy vibes talking to Harper. So I was totally down on Daria the first episode and have liked her ever since. So I do wonder if they rewrote after the pilot.
That's true. It's like in Succession when Roman had the wife and kids in the pilot and then like mysteriously it doesn't.
It happens all the time. It's also a different director, right? So you made that point about Lena Dunham being the first director. So I wonder if that was Lena's interpretation. You know what I'm saying? Like there's so many different angles on it. So I think that's a really interesting thing that you just mentioned that I hadn't thought about because I now love her. But then Yasmin leaves. I'm sorry. Then
Yasmin leaves. You're right. Yasmin leaves. Daria leaves and Harper comes in. You're right.
No, but Harper had been in the bathroom hearing that conversation. And so she was in a stall listening to this conversation, which as Harper does, lurking in a stall while people are basically like talking shit about her in the first episode. Now we've got Harper in a stall hearing Daria give that sisterly mentoring advice to
such a good point.
Yasmin. And Harper knows that she's now iced out of Daria's affection and she's at odds with Eric. So she's looking at her roommate and after her plant debacle with Seb in the morning, everything's looking up for Yasmin now and everything's looking really, really down for Harper.
Yeah. But so Harper, I mean, like she comes in with this just like fake smile, trying to put on a happy face. Like she's not just been traumatized and then F things up with Daria. Just everything is shit for her. And then back on the floor, now we sort of are getting insight about what's happening with this whole, I like Italy better. I want to call it Italy with Italy.
Yeah.
So back on the floor, Eric is yelling, Rishi, Skellington is buying euros, which also
what's Skellington? Okay, so
is Skellington real?
No.
It's like reminds me of Jack Skellington.
Ellington is real, and it's so appropriate for Halloween. So to me, this was an insider. This was another little insider nugget. Anyone who knows the big hedge funds knows about Ellington, but calling it Skellington for Jack Skellington, because it's almost Halloween here, like it made me so happy.
But I wonder if it was like almost Halloween then. We should look that up. But it's almost Halloween here. It's Halloween in like what, 8 days, 7 days?
He said they're buying euros.
Yes, they're buying euros. So it's the opposite of that short. And just as a reminder, Eric was worried about Phelim being short. He had this feeling, given what other people were doing, that this thing was not going to go through. Being short euros was the wrong way. And so then on the TV, it says the Italian PM is adopting...
that's Rishi. That's Rishi reading out. Rishi's coming over the
Oh, that was Rishi. Okay, so he says the Italian PM is adopting a conciliatory tone in the first public address. No referendum on EU membership. Eurodollars incredibly well bid. So, turns out Eric was right about this whole thing.
And you see, by the way, because now we know, having listened to all this, that the entire market's the wrong way around on this trade. So it's going to be pandemonium. And they do like a classic Wall Street thing. Everyone's standing up, yelling, throwing papers, which is like what I always joke about. That's what's depicted. And Harper, who should be in the thick of it, right? Who should be on the phone, who should be executing trades, whether or not she gets them right, like who should be doing all of this, grabs her bag, red-eyed, and walks off the floor. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yeah, she's just shaken. She's like, I'm out. I'm leaving. But so next scene, we're now in the restaurant. So Kenny's in an empty restaurant, the steakhouse that they're going to. Again, it's 6 p.m. So like, of course it's empty, but whatever.
No, but it's like a stuffy steak place on a Friday. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
That's true. Yeah. And it's a Friday. And he mentions that later. He's like, this is one of the only business dinners I've had on a Friday.
Well, we'll get to that, yeah.
Yes. So Kenny has a martini waiting for her. He says, I took the liberty here. They'll be here within a half an hour. And Yaz is clearly a little bit confused because she probably thought that 6 p.m. was like the time that everyone would be there. So, I mean, I know I would be like, well, wait a second. You told me 6 p.m. Anyway, Kenny had...
I don't think he gave her the wrong time. I just think the client...
Not that it was the wrong time. Yeah, I think that she didn't expect that the clients wouldn't be there and that she'd be basically alone with Kenny in a bar for a half an hour. So
certainly something she could have anticipated, by the way, but like...
Yes.
Understood. We'll forgive it for plot.
Yes. So he says, I'm not good at apologies. I know that sometimes I can be a bit coarse, a bit harsh on the desk. I don't want to treat you special, so I treat you how I was treated, which we saw, right? When Hillary was yelling at him, it's almost a cycle of abuse, although I think there's something more with Kenny, which we're going to talk about as well. And he says, that's why that article, it's not an expose. People know what they're joining. And Yasmin jumps in. Again, this is like where this whole kind of theme of her in this episode, which is like her just trying to like laugh off problematic behavior, not be a prude. And she's like, I get it. It's learned behavior. Back to the title of the
She says it's
episode.
Very hard to stop learned behavior.
So to which Kenny says, there is a hierarchy, to which Yaz says, yep, I completely understand. And then Kenny opens up and says, if I'm honest, I get properly nervous before these. I don't feel comfortable around certain types of people. You know, the people that things come easily to. I'm not saying that's you. I know when I was hammered, I said some unforgivable things. Trust me, I felt fucking crushed the next morning. It's a good lubricator. It makes everything feel better. He's like, as he's drinking, also saying he like has a drinking problem, but like, yeah, it's a good lubricator. It makes everything feel warm. But also I've said terrible things when I get drunk.
Puts his hand on hers while he's apologizing. He reaches out and puts his hand on hers, which is not okay.
No, there's just so much to say about him. I like don't even know how to say it.
I think that, listen, Kenny's getting wasted at this dinner to overcome his social anxiety. And that is something that I've been guilty of hundreds of times. And I think so many people have been as well. Maybe I'm wrong and maybe it's just me and Kenny, but I do think that.
No.
Yeah.
It's like
I think
so
that this
many
is
people
something that very commonly happens. So we've got Kenny, who is the mentor, who is coming from the relatively low class background relative to Yasmin. And we're going to get into more of how that plays out. But he's basically saying the reason I feel so uncomfortable writ large is because that's how I see myself in all of these social situations, that everyone's looking down on me. And he assumes that. And his way of coping with that is alcohol. We've got Clement, who, again, perceiving his own social inferiority, shoots heroin. And we've got Eric, who when his status feels threatened, he lashes out on this. So all of these mentors or managers have their own problematic ways of dealing with that theme of feeling inadequate in their own social standing.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because like I empathize with how they're feeling. You empathize with the person who came from a lower status background. You empathize with the person who does feel cornered.
Yep.
But the way that they are dealing with that is so messed up. But again, it's one of these things where I do love the character dynamics. I feel like I shouldn't even say this, but I do like the relationship that Clement has with Robert, because somebody is at least kind of looking out for him, even though it's actually super problematic. Same thing with Eric, like we've said in prior episodes, like the way that he does look after Harper. There's parts of it that are great, and then it's like wildly problematic. And then with the Kenny thing, I mean, I don't want to give too much away, but like Kenny has an interesting arc going forward as well.
I will say for 30 seconons, I felt bad for Kenny and kind of liked him. I was like, oh, he's opening up. Like he's realized that he's saying, I'm super awkward and I get too drunk sometimes to try to cope. And I know it's wrong and I don't want to be like this and whatever. And I was like, yes, Kenny, yes, gross.
Yes.
Whatever.
Like I want to like you. Yeah.
I really wanted to like him right then. But then the dinner goes on.
And then he
gets wasted and it all goes to hell.
Exactly. But the fact that he says, I felt fucking crushed the next morning. And then as he's like, I'm going to continue to drink. And then he says, being Irish is not a necessity to being drunk. And then Yasmin says, it's not an obstacle either. And at this point, Seb calls her a couple times. Yaz is just ignoring it. And Kenny says, well, what does your boyfriend do? To which she replies, media. And they basically just laugh and they cheers. And for a moment, things are okay. But obviously things are not going to stay okay. So next scene, Maxim has joined Kenny and Yaz with his business partner as well.
Anton.
And Anton, yes. And Kenny then pipes in with a dig. And he says, Yaz did a great job getting a face-to-face. Nice to know an expensive social education pays off. Which, I mean, Honestly, like that's also part of the reason why people send their kids to schools is, again, the network. That's the whole point of going to quote unquote fancy social educations. And so they're obviously setting up this complex that he has about his class, similar to the Robert Clement situation. And Yaz says it certainly does. Certainly pays to be a bit narpy sometimes, which I hadn't heard of that term. Had you? Narpy?
Well, from Succession. So this is the same
do they call them NARPs? Do they call them NARPs?
NRP, but like it's the same thing.
Oh,
right?
They said NRP. Yeah. So I'd heard it, the NRP from Succession.
That's exactly where I knew she was going with it. So Kenny doesn't understand the term. No. I only knew the reference from Succession where it's used to refer to not a real person. In the context of Succession, they used it to refer to people from a lower class of like the workers in the cruises division where quite literally their lives don't matter to the corporate ruling class. And so Kenny's got the backhanded compliment saying like, it's good to know that an expensive social education actually pays off. But like Yasmin is just really leaning into the entitled prick thing by saying, oh yeah, sometimes I like to pretend I'm not a real person. Like I like to cosplay as someone from a lower class. And Maxim is laughing about this with her. And Kenny suddenly realizes that they're kind of looking at each other and they've got this inside jokery. And he realizes there's a deeper relationship between the two, that Yasmin didn't just go out, randomly pitch this to some guy that she had met once at a party at a fancy school. And Yasmin calls him like a big brother as they are basically gazing into each other's eyes. And Kenny reads it differently. And we had that question earlier on when she was talking about plans with her boyfriend on a Friday night and wasn't going to do like the, hey, let's get off the desk and catch up. And Kenny was like, why the fuck would you think I was asking you out on a date or whatever? And now it is that inappropriate. I think it's become very clear that there is this implication that something else is happening. So Kenny reads it as like, oh no, Maxim's super into you and you're kind of flirting back. So he goes to Maxim. Yep. Is that how you would describe it? Would you describe yourself as her big brother, implying that Maxim has a crush on her? And Maxim goes, yes. And I'm very protective. Yep. So Maxim is not here for Kenny's bullshit, right? And he's clearly seeing right through it and being like, hey, bro, listen, you want part of this account? Don't fuck with Yaz. She's my girl.
Yeah. Although then Kenny says, if her dad, meaning Yasmin's dad, wasn't in publishing, I'd have guessed he helped get you a job at Brevin. And Maxim replies, actually, he's pretty close to Alan, so it didn't hurt. He says, but I guess we all play with the hand that we're dealt, which if I was Maxim at that point, I wouldn't have been like, oh yeah, it was because of this woman's father that I got this job.
No,
I would
but
have
I
been
think
like,
what
no,
he's
is it on my
saying
merit?
is like, hey, listen, just so you know, her dad's in publishing and he's really good friends with Alan Howard. So watch out who you're messing with here.
Oh, interesting.
Like,
I missed that
he's not
part
just
of
some
it.
like
Okay.
random publisher. He's a publisher who's really close friends with Alan Howard. So I guess we just play the hand we're dealt. She's big time.
Got it.
I'm big time.
Yep. Yeah.
Watch who you're talking to here. Yes.
Oh, okay. So Kenny
and
is
I'm also like, Kenny, chill out and sober up. Like, what the fuck?
I know.
You're now insulting his client, implying that he's like, you know, the product of nepotism. Like, come on.
Yep. So then Kenny, clearly very drunk, suggests a nightcap. And Maxim is, again, trying to be respectful, sees that there is this hostile situation and is like, look, Yaz, we defer to you. And Yaz doesn't want to come across as boring or anything. And she says, I could do one more. It's Friday. And then Kenny says, well, the only places open right now are strip clubs. And Yaz,
what world are we in? By the way, we're the only things open. Because how long could this dinner conceivably be? Let's do some math. It was a 6 p.m. table. Let's say this is the rip-roaringest dinner of all time, and it's 5 hours later, okay? I'm sorry, but there are other things open at 11 p.m., and that's being generous, okay? It's probably 8:30.
9. Yeah, 100%. So Yaz, like, I know a late bar around here. It's got girls, but in a more kitsch, ironic way. And it's almost like a Hawaiian theme bar. It seems like
it's like a
Hawaiian.
tiki bar. Yeah, I mean, but
like
this is her. It conjures up the quote from that article, right? Once I found myself in situations beyond my control whilst being imprisoned within a prison of my own complicity. Like, she clearly doesn't want to be going to a strip club, but she's being complicit by picking the spot. Right. And she's like, oh, I'm the cool girl. Right. This makes me think so much of Gone Girl, like one of my favorite speeches of all time, the cool girl thing of like, I don't mind going to a strip club. Let's find one that's ironic. So it's not like so overtly like whatever, but like I'm in on the joke. I'm cool. Don't worry. I can hang. Let's do this in like a way that I have said it's okay. And thereby it's not a problem.
I want to actually just read that. I looked at the cool girl quote. I want to read that because I do think it's important for anyone who hasn't seen this movie. Right. So it says, men always saying that, again, as a cool girl is the defining compliment, don't they? She's a cool girl. Being the cool girl means I'm hot, brilliant, funny woman who adores football, poker, dirty jokes, and burping, who plays video games, drinks cheap beer, loves threesomes, and jams hot dogs and hamburgers into her mouth like she's hosting the world's biggest culinary gangbang, while somehow maintaining a size 2 because cool girls are above all else hot. Hot and understanding. Cool girls never get angry. They only smile in a chagrined, loving manner and let their man do whatever they want. Go ahead, shit on me. I don't mind. I'm the cool girl. And then it goes on, but it's this, nothing bothers me. I can hang. I can do all this stuff. And it's like
the exact same thing, by the way, that the other woman on the desk was ripping into the woman who wrote the expose for doing, which she was doing herself. And I just, again, I relate to this so much because I felt so much pressure to be the cool girl. Like that cool girl zeitgeist, especially in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I don't feel it now. I'm not cool.
No, not now, but we're 40.
But I really we have felt that in my 20s. Yeah.
This is what's so awesome about getting older. We turn 40. I am 40. Jen's about to turn 40. But you come into yourself. You stop giving fucks about anything else. You just are like, this is me. If you don't like it, I don't care. Go somewhere else. I'm
fully baked. I want to hang with. Right? Like I'm not trying to impress you
I don't
anymore.
give a shit.
Yeah.
Yes. But for people who are early in their career, bottom of the totem pole, trying to fit in, trying to hang, especially in an environment like Wall Street, which is a old boys club. Yes, there is a lot more women, not at the senior levels, but like, yes to all those things. At the same time, it all makes sense. So anyway.
Yeah. No, I mean, and again, the strip club thing wasn't an issue for me. I never felt pressure for that. And that was something Lehman actually was very clear about it. During training, Lehman's offices were in Times Square. And next door, in the building next door, there was something called the Hawaiian Tropic Zone, which made me think of this.
Oh, yeah.
I swear to God,
I didn't even know that was a strip club. I thought it was like a hot topic.
It wasn't. It wasn't a hot topic. But it was, again, I never went in there, and I'll explain why in a second. But I think it was a bar where there were women in like bikinis. Okay. So it wasn't a strip club, but it was one of those places where you could see someone feeling potentially uncomfortable. Yes. And they told us in training, and I don't know if this was true or not, but someone told us that they had the cameras on the outside of the Lehman building. And if they saw you walking into the Hawaiian Tropic Zone, you'd be fired. Saying this out loud now, I definitely think that was a lie. Like there's no way they were like watching the cameras to see if a Lehman employee like happened to wander in at like any hour of the day. So funny. Now saying that out loud, I realize how ridiculous it is and probably wasn't true at all. But that fear stuck in my mind because there was this huge crackdown on that like 80s, 90s culture where like the scenes from Wolf of Wall Street with like the strippers coming into the office, that stuff really did happen. But
way before our time.
Before our time.
But before our time.
Happened during our time, but yes. But
not in the 06.
Those stories are 100% true, verified. Know people who lived through it. Know people who wish those days hadn't ended and worked with some of those people. But definitely that's not part of the culture nowadays. And we can talk about the fact that they do ultimately go to this strip club that Yasmin suggests. And Maxim says to her, like, don't worry, we won't tell Pierpoint you took us here. And she's like, oh, we'll just put it on our personal cards so that it can't be tracked and they wouldn't ask for reimbursement or whatever. To be honest, I did go to a strip club once with clients. Same. The clients were the ones who dragged me there and they paid for it. And I left after about 5 minutes because I was like, this is just uncomfortable and I just really am not into this or whatever. And it like wasn't a big deal. And this was outside the capacity of like a formal work event or anything like that. It was like I was meeting up with clients and they were like, we're all going here. And I was like, where? And I walked with them and then I was like, I'm leaving. But they paid for that themselves.
But no, I mean, like back to the cool girl thing. Like it's definitely a thing. I got dragged to a strip club once as I think a first year, and it was one of those things where it was like, I walked in, it was the same kind of thing. Yeah. But at the time, you're like, I don't want to show that I have any qualms.
Yeah, you don't want to be like, you don't want to be the prude. Like you said, you don't want to throw cold water on it, not cold milk. But like everybody else is having a good time. You don't want the one to be like, this isn't fun. But like, it wasn't, just whatever. So they're there, by the way. They go to this strip club, the one that Yasmin suggested. And Yasmin and Maxim and Anton are all speaking in Spanish. And yet Kenny drunkenly is like, are you guys talking about me? Which made me think of in the second episode where Kenny is talking to that other woman on the desk. And Yasmin tries to insert herself and is like, are you guys talking about me? And Kenny's like, not everything's about you. And Yasmin obviously has the grace to not be like, not everything's about you, Kenny, but not everything's about you, Kenny. And these guys are telling her.
They were literally setting up an actual follow-up meeting to discuss business. Like they just were doing it in Spanish.
Yeah, well, doing it in Spanish to cut Kenny out of the conversation because it's not about him. They don't want Kenny as their coverage.
Yes. Well, he's actively insulted the client. Like, what are you doing? And then, so a woman comes over, offers a lap dance. Yaz tries to laugh and say, we could all get one, worth a laugh. And cool girl. Kenny says, ladies first, pays. And again, Yasmin just trying to be cool and hang is like, whatever. I mean, it's Friday. And so the woman starts, again, like getting close to her and she's so uncomfortable. So is Maxim. Like, it's just, you feel for her. She's like, just get me out of here. Like looking around awkwardly, uncomfortably. And then Kenny gets up and walks away.
Well, Kenny's like laughing during the whole thing and like loving it or whatever. And I do think there's the two layers to it.
Although I felt like he was... So it was funny. I didn't see that he was loving it. I thought he just sort of sipped. He wasn't even looking at her, but I think he was happy that he essentially humiliated her.
Oh, I didn't read that at all. And I, to be honest, didn't remember him walking away. He was like laughing, like it'll be a laugh and like during the dance or whatever. And the other guys are looking super uncomfortable. And I read it as this like class thing too. Whereas like this is like this very like lowbrow thing to be doing versus these guys who are like, dude, we speak like 50 different languages. Like we could be anywhere. You took us to a steakhouse, which is like default investment banking restaurant. And now we're here at this strip club, like being forced to act like we're having a good time. Like this is just, you don't get us, Kenny. You're not from our world.
But to try to humiliate Yaz in front of like a friend / like the first person, the first business that she has basically brought in. Like, so anyway, next scene, now we're back with Harper and Todd. And they're talking, and then he gets up and he puts on a vest from Felham. I think it was Felham. It could have been one of the other guys.
I tried to look at the thing, and I thought it said MM. So I was like, is that Mellon Mercer? I was going way too deep. I don't think there was anything to read into which vest he stole.
But Harper freaks out. She's like, where did you get that? What if somebody goes looking for that and calls the club or the bank? And Todd is like, people lose shit in the club all the time. And Harper's like, no, those are my friends and my clients. Todd says, you put on your white voice when you're around those people. And she basically is like, look, do you know what you would look like on CCTV? So I had to look that up because I didn't know this. So it's basically mass surveillance videos in London, which reminded me of your Lehman commentary, like mass surveillance videos.
Yes, we have CCTV here in America too, but we don't.
Oh, do we?
CCTV.
I had no idea.
Yes, well, closed circuit. Yeah, so that's like what the security cameras are. That's what it is.
Oh. Okay. Well, I didn't know that, but cool. Yeah. So anyway, so he says.
But in London, to be fair, if you ever watch like a British spy show, like watch Slow Horses, which I've now had to recommend twice, and I don't feel like you're listening to me. But yeah, if you watch Slow Horses or anything else, the way that they'll track people is so much more involved than the way that, because we don't have the same level of surveillance here in the US as effective.
Well, because people would freak out.
Yeah.
You're just sort of casually like, yeah. So anyway, he then says, you blame everyone for fucking up college but yourself. And Harper then is just like, I'm done. So she basically is like, what are you doing here? Get out. She kicks him out. And as she's standing outside, he doesn't have a shirt on. He has a suitcase. Harper's standing there.
Harper's literally standing there in her underwear.
Yes. Also true.
Todd yells as he's walking away down this incredibly posh London street where Yasmin's home is. They never should have gave y'all money. And
what did that mean? I didn't understand what that meant.
Right. Mm-hmm. So we've got the context of Harper having picked herself up by her bootstraps to get here.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so he's said, you're in a disguise. You're using your white voice. This isn't you. You're putting on this facade. I know the real you. All of this money, this access, this has changed you, and you're not the real you anymore. And I don't think that's how Harper feels at all. I think Harper feels this is the real me. But imagine hearing that in the context of what she's just been told by Eric. That I know all the secret ways that you don't belong here. Oh. So she's got the people in her new world telling her she doesn't belong there. And she's got the people from her old life telling her you don't fit in there either. So she's getting it from all sides, from up and
back. Such a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next scene is just this brief one. It's basically Gus and Robert. So they're talking about the interaction with Eric, because obviously Gus had just been ripped on by Eric for answering the phone and booking trades that made the firm money, and he's getting yelled at. And Robert is zoning him out, looking straight ahead, and it zeroes in on some guy talking to his
like
dad.
A father-son relationship.
That's what it seems. Yeah.
So I agree.
But then back with Yaz. So then she walks into the bedroom with Seb naked and a cam girl on the computer, passed out. And the woman's like, I'm still charging you. Yaz angrily closes the computer, goes to this plant, tries to like take all
destroys the plant,
dirt out. She's so pissed off at him. And then knocks on Harper's door and was like, can I come and sleep here? And Harper's just like, sure. Like you said, love the little friendship with Harper and Yaz. Yaz tries to talk to Harper, but Harper's like, I'm just so tired. And she then gets a call from Kenny, who probably has now realized he fucked up. It's
at
1 a.m.
1:12 in the morning.
At 1:12 in the morning.
Her. I'm sorry. If your manager from work is calling you at 1:12 in the morning on a Friday night, and again, to our timeline, like this, the world in which only the strip clubs are open, we now have proof because the night has long since ended and it's only 1:12 in the morning.
Yeah, as she's trying to talk to Harper, Harper just like needs to pass out. And then she picks up her phone. And the last line is, she's reading from this Guardian article. She said, I knew if I left, a part of me would stay. But I knew if I stayed, a part of me would leave forever. And I decided that was the more precious part. And so that was the end of the episode.
By the way, look at us. We're the women who, if we left, a part of us stayed. Here we are, however many years hence. We're literally closing in on 2 decades after my summer internship at Morgan Stanley. And here we are still talking about that life. So clearly a part of you stays.
But so anyway, this has been really fun and it's hilarious. We had only 8 pages, Jen, but I think that it was still 2 hours plus of recording. So
yeah, that's all right. We're at 158. So who are we bullish and bearish on really quickly?
Well, I really like Harper and Yaz's relationship right now. So as like a unit, I'm bullish on their friendship. In terms of people, I mean, oh God, I don't know. Who are you saying?
Daria is coming up in my book every single episode, man. I am like team Daria 100%. And I guess like bearish on is freaking Clement.
Everyone.
Yeah. Clement, Eric not looking so good in this episode. Casper, it's terrible. Like, goodbye,
Casper's
Casper.
awful.
Never need to see you again. And Kenny, oh God, I'm so bearish on Kenny. But I've always been bearish on Kenny. Like, Kenny sucks.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're all, I still think that Eric is just the best character in the show. So I'm like,
he is. I know. I love him as a character. I just wish they didn't make him do these extreme things of yelling and things like that. I think it would be so much more powerful if it were subtle. And I think that about most shows. I think that I love
You said that about Succession. You said that exact thing when we were going through and you were like, season 2, Logan, he's like slapping his son. Like, you don't need to do that. He has power without being physical. Yes. Same thing with Eric.
The scariest, most powerful people typically are the ones who are whispering,
Oh,
like
100%.
That is, So it's just that rang false to me and was so unnecessary. And I thought it could have been so much better done to make Eric this more nuanced, threatening figure versus so overt. I'm always like a show me, don't tell me kind of person. And
Great.
And what's great about this show is when they are ambiguous,
Yes.
Like, why is he calling her at 1:12? By the way, is this a booty call? Like, why are you like, maybe it's an apology, but like,
see, I thought it was an apology, but yeah.
No, but you never know. Like, again, like it's unclear. If he'd send her a text being like, you up?
That would have been much more like,
but like, why is he calling? Like and remember, Seb was calling her. You have like the flip, right? Because Seb was calling her and she was ignoring him when she's out with Kenny.
Yeah.
And there was that, still back to that original conversation where she was like, I have plans with my boyfriend on a Friday night. I can't do my review. And now here we are. It's a Friday night. Her boyfriend's passed out with a cam girl. And then she's in bed and Kenny's calling her. Like, this is all super weird.
Yes. But back to the other point of Clement being a heroin addict, because he would have been such a better character not being a freaking heroin addict. Like, they had something good and then they had to like try to up the ante. And it's like, again, you've jumped the shark.
Keep it subtle, guys. Not everyone's going to understand every single trade. That's what we're here for. But like, everyone, I think, just overall appreciates the subtlety so much more. And I can see that they were still having enough growing pains in this first season trying to find their voice. everyone is raving about this third season. I am still loving this, and I'm loving all of the finance of it. I'm loving watching our lives kind of be retold through this lens. It's great, right? I'm like, yeah, watching my life being retold through the lens of like people getting too drunk and dragging women out to strip clubs. Like,
right.
And doing heroin while they're buying suits. Like, that was not my life by any means. But
I will say, we are so sorry we were off last week. We were out at a conference in LA, which was awesome. If you are not subscribed to we call it the big podcast, the Wall Street Skinny, we're having a lot of awesome conversations on that. So definitely check that out if you haven't. But we will be back next week because we do not have any travel. So yay. So thank you guys so much for letting us do this. We have so much fun, and we will catch you next time.
Bye.